I have with me in the studio Chief Executive Officer of EduMac Consults and also initiator Concerned Parents and Educators Network, Mrs. Yinka Ogunde. Thank you so much for joining us on the News at 10.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for having me here.
Well, you heard that report, the major complaint for teachers, remuneration as well as training. How can this be resolved?
Basically, I believe that those issues are very, very fundamental. They are critical and they can determine the quality of teachers that we have or that we are going to have as a country. Take the issue of teachers training, for example. We actually need to revisit that issue. We need to go down to the basics. How are these teachers trained? How do we attract personnel into our workforce, into the teaching force? If we don't look at all these issues, then if we're talking about teachers' welfare and where they are, the poor quality of teachers, then we haven't started. I would want to suggest that we go back to where we train our teachers and the kind of people that we are training. How do we train them? The teachers train in colleges. What are we actually doing there? I think that is very, very critical because the quality of teachers that we are now having, that's the major complaint. That, oh yes, there's very low quality of teachers that we have. How do we redress that?
I remember in a conversation with you, you mentioned that there are teachers in classrooms who don't have a passion for what they do, and that's really important for any teacher who needs to be in the classroom.
I believe that's extremely important. That's why I talked about the kind of people that we are attracting into the workforce. You will see that sometimes the kind of people that will come in are people that have tried other things and maybe it didn't work out and then they end up being teachers. We need people who are passionate about teaching. We need people who really understand what it is to be a teacher. We need people who really from the first instant desire to be teachers because it's a very long haul. They're not just going to be there for 1 year or 2 years. And we are putting into their hands the major asset of this nation. And that is our children, our major asset. We are giving it to them. Who are those people that we are giving the critical asset of this nation? Who are they that we're giving them?
But why are teachers most oftentimes ignored? Why? Because you just talked about us placing in their hands our most valuable assets, which are our children. So why are they still ignored? Why don't we value them as we should?
I believe that is why we need to redesign our perception about education in this country. We need to understand that if you decide to be a teacher, it's a prestigious profession. You are in charge of shaping the future generation. We are putting in your hands what is going to be the Nigeria of tomorrow. But what do we have? You actually have, if somebody that is extremely intelligent says, I want to be a teacher, and I remember the case of a small child.
I would love for you to hold that thought. We'll take a quick break. In part 2, after the break, we'll continue our conversation with Mrs. Ogunde. You were sharing a story with me very quickly.
Yes, I was actually trying to tell you about a young girl that the parent, immediately she said, I want to be a teacher. They just shout her down, how can you be a teacher? You cannot be a teacher. And that's because of the perception people hold about teachers. They believe it's a poorly remunerated profession with little or no prestige attached to it. But I think if we are able to address the issues of getting well-trained teachers and paying them well, then we will be doing our nation a lot of good.
Well, that was Mrs. Yinka Ogunde, the Chief Executive Officer of EduMac Consults, also initiator Concerned Parents and Educators Network, Mrs. Yinka Ogunde.